Welcome to the podcast where three longtime friends talk about video games from the average gamer's perspective. My name is Andrew Kimball.
I'm Dylan Wren.
And I'm Aubrey Summer.
And
we are your friendly neighborhood gamers.
Welcome back to the neighborhood, and thanks for stopping by. Today, we are taking a look back at this current generation of gaming through the lens of live service games and how they have affected the industry as a whole. Before we dive in, if you enjoy the show, we would ask you to help us spread the word and grow our community by leaving a rating/review on your podcast app of choice if they allow it. And if you're listening or watching this on YouTube, leaving a comment or a like will help us grow there too. Now, continuing with what I am starting to call the wait for it winter, we are joined once again by Phil Barrera from the Wait For It podcast to help us discuss this topic. Phil, how's it going?
Thank you for following instructions. I appreciate it. Wait For It winter sounds like the worst season of Game of Thrones, so that's not a really very good arc. But yeah, no, excited.
Wow, under season 8. That's impressive.
Yeah, to be fair, I've only seen one episode of Game of Thrones, and it's the series finale. So,
well, yeah. See, Game of Thrones, the whole plot was winter, wait for it.
Yeah, no, I get it. I understand. It just seems like you could probably skip our arc. So, but no, excited to be here. I floated this conversation out to you, and with a little wink, a little nudge, because I wanted to discuss it. But yeah, I'm doing good. I put a Snickers bar in the fridge like an hour ago. That thing's gonna slap like later tonight, so it's gonna be a good night.
That'll be good.
No matter how this goes, I'm looking forward to that Snickers.
That is the kind of energy that I'm excited about for this episode. It's not a meme this time. Eric is not joining us, and also Aubrey is absent for this episode. So it's just the three of us. We're going to be tackling this topic. Like Phil said, he messaged me and was interested in discussing it. So we decided to make that happen. The kind of question that spawned all of this, or the idea, is that there's been a lot of discourse and conversation, a lot of it stemming from the recent news that Sony and PlayStation have canceled a ton of they had like at one point 12 planned live service games, and I think now they've canceled somewhere around like 7 of them. Mm-hmm. And Concord came out last year and was a massive failure. So there's been a lot of discussion around the idea that especially PlayStation, but just kind of the industry as a whole, have they wasted this generation trying to chase this live service idea, this one particular type of game? And so that's kind of the core idea and the core topic that we're going to be discussing here. Phil, would you say that about sums it up?
Yeah, it's been a conversation I've seen pop up a lot more recently, but I have kind of seen it trickle in over the last few months or so. And then, it all really does date back to that article where it was like, Sony is developing 12 live service games. And we were like, we don't want that. And they said, we don't care. So even though like a lot of this is going to be about, so what Sony has done, we'll sprinkle in a little Xbox conversation. And also I think something about one of the other videos I watched earlier this evening about the third option now being quote unquote, maybe as affordable and as accessible as ever. So, excited to talk about all of that.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, it's not just limited to PlayStation. We saw it with Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed. They were trying to sort of live serviceify that game franchise there. They've put out several other live services, like The Division, Skull and Bones. Yeah, that was another big live service flop.
And their shooter that they just shut down recently.
Oh my gosh. Why do we keep always X-Defiant?
X-Defiant. It's got such a forgettable name.
Yeah, it really has the most. It sounds like a mode in Call of Duty, like you're playing X-Defiant mode.
Yeah. About the only like company that I can think, like big sort of publisher that I can think that's not putting out sort of live service stuff is maybe Nintendo. I can't really think of a a live service Nintendo game, but that also is maybe just a Nintendo's going to do whatever Nintendo wants. So I don't
Splatoon
know.
wasn't a live service game, right? Did it have like a battle pass or skins?
Splatoon?
Or
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think it maybe had some seasons, like they do Splatfest and stuff. But Nintendo has their own like kind of shady marketing practices of their like timed releases and the stuff on their online service that they only have, like their Super Mario Run, or what, not Run, that's the mobile game, but they had like that Super Mario version of Tetris,
like 99
or
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't keep those out forever. So and their games don't go on sale. So like they have their own kind of methods that have worked for them.
Yeah. There's stuff that they do that's equally annoying, but yeah, I can't really think of a bunch of like, it's not like the new Zelda had like a whole live service component to it, you know?
No.
Yeah.
So,
but something else that I thought about while you were talking is, you know, you were talking about kind of the live servicification of Assassin's Creed, and it made me think of like, we saw Skull and Bones, the disaster that it was. We saw the Suicide Squad game. Yeah, right. Which coming from a studio like Rocksteady should have been so much better than it was, because it was forced live service. We saw games like Gotham Knights and most recently Dragon Age The Veilguard, which to varying degrees, but both of those games were like live service at some point in their development and then pivoted when they realized that like that's not going to work. But then they both kind of came out as lesser versions of what they probably could have been had they been intentionally developed as just being what they were supposed to be. Like Gotham Knights was just such a weird experience with all of the like leftover remnants of live service in what they were trying to sell as like a co-op story game.
Yeah.
Suicide Squad was even more live servicey than it ended up being, which is crazy. So,
yeah,
like,
they stuck to live service for that one.
Yeah, they stuck to it, but it could have been worse, which is like crazy.
Oh yeah. So maybe it would be good to, before we get too much deeper into this conversation, define what we are talking about. Like, we've thrown around titles of games, but what are we talking about when we're talking about live service games? What does live service mean to you, Phil?
I think of Fortnite, so that's really the only one. And now Marvel Rivals are really the only two games that I consistently play.
Okay.
I mean, Fortnite has stuck around with me in my rotation since 2018. It's kind of like Eric and I have talked about this while we've been on. We had a little bit of a lull where we didn't really do any multiplayer gaming. So what really brought us back actually was Titanfall 2. And then Fortnite came out because we couldn't play PUBG at the time. We didn't have gaming PCs. So I found out that, oh, this is like PUBG. It's the same engine. Let's give it a shot. And literally since then, I've continued to play that game because it's easy to just jump in and jump out. I can go a month without playing it, and it doesn't really change too much.
Mm-hmm.
And then, now with Marvel Rivals, we're continuing to get into that quite a bit. But stuff like that, and then like some of those games that we mentioned here before, things that I've never really had any interest in playing, like Skull and Bones, like Suicide Squad, Sea of Thieves. That's another one that's it's been very, very successful that I think of as well. So those are the primary ones that I keep up with. But then again, over the last few years, we've just seen so many of them to varying, mostly poor levels of success.
Yeah.
When I think of like just kind of a broad concept of live service, I think of maybe there's some sort of a like story mode to like get you familiar with the game and to try to appease people who like those type of games. But typically it's like there's some sort of pretty repetitive gameplay loop. You're chasing some sort of upgrade or gear or something, doing the loop over and over, and then the game is enticing you to play it constantly by rewarding you for completing separate objectives as you do that loop. So whether it's in Fortnite, it's Battle Royale, but there's all sorts of other things you can do to complete these quests to like level up your battle pass and unlock stuff that you can then use to purchase the next battle pass or purchase skins or whatever. And then talking about skins, that's kind of the other side of it, is a lot of these games, typically these days, the model is to like not charge you to get in, but then they make their money off of cosmetics or like silly fun things, because a lot of times these games are multiplayer, and so there's a social element of it where you want to look cool when you're playing with your friends, or the character that you really like has a really awesome or very sexy skin that you just absolutely have to have.
Are you talking about Sue Storm? Is that?
I can't. I have.
Could be anybody.
Just I was being vague. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
Could be anyone. Any one of the various Fortnite skins that I own.
I wasn't talking about Fortnite. I was assuming it was a Marvel Rivals comment, but
Could be anything.
yeah. No, and I agree though. I think of a live service game or a games as a service as like something that wants you to keep coming back. Like it's something that wants you to continue to be in its ecosystem so that it can keep trying to sell you things. And that doesn't, like you said, a lot of them are free. Some of them aren't. I think Skull and Bones was a full price game.
Suicide Squad,
full price game.
Quadruple A game.
Destiny 2, one of the ones that I keep up with is like, you got to spend money to get into it, that sort of thing. But it's something that is rewarding you for doing something in the game, but it's not just giving you all of those rewards. So like in the past, we're all old enough that we remember the glory days of just DLC in general, where it's like even horse armor, where it's like you bought the horse armor, but then you had it. You had like, you didn't have to do anything extra to like, you maybe had to go to a specific vendor in the game to go pick it up, but like you spent the money and then got it. And now when I think of live service, what I'm thinking of is like, I am spending money to get the privilege to play the game to earn these cosmetics, but if I don't keep playing this game, I'm not going to get the cosmetics. Like I bought the most recent battle pass for Fortnite because they had a Godzilla event, and so I was like, of course I'm going to get the Godzilla skin in this game that I play once a year. But
it's great though. It's a great skin.
It does. It is so amazing.
The Mothra, the glider is chef's kiss.
Yeah. My favorite is occasionally I'll see like the Godzilla running around in the Air Jordans,
my Godzilla has Jordans.
So it's just, hits the gritty.
Which
but
also cost money.
Yeah. But it's one of those where it's like I picked that battle pass up. If I didn't play it, I wouldn't earn those skins that I bought it for, so it's something that wants me to keep coming back. Now you'll run into some that like Diablo 4 is one that comes to mind, where it's like they'll just sell you some skins in the store. But a lot of them, when I think about it, it's like buy this like punch card, and if you don't keep coming back to us, we're not going to keep punching your card, and you're not going to get the stuff that you theoretically paid money for, So that's kind of how I think about them. So
yeah, and even worse than that, up until recently, where we've started to see a shift, to be a little more player friendly. It was like, play this game in this like 3-month period, or you're not going to get the stuff you didn't punch, period.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's what Marvel Rivals is now, like they let you buy it, and then as long as you bought it, you can always earn those rewards.
Yeah.
I think Halo
started that, I think.
Infinite.
Right?
Yeah, Halo Infinite's doing that. Now they did recently change it. It used to be that like, and I actually wasn't aware that they changed, like I read the press release or whatever where they were changing it. So they used to let you just like every battle pass was also available to purchase. So like all of the ones since the beginning of the game to now. And they've changed it recently. They've announced that starting with like this upcoming one, it's only going to be available during that like 3-month period or whatever it is. I don't know how long their seasons are. So you'll have to purchase it then, and then it'll go into like a rotating shop or something like that. And so
I see. Okay.
I saw it on Reddit. So like, obviously they were all up in arms about it because they can't be normal about anything. But
I mean, it going into a rotating shop is still kind of a decent middle ground.
I read that and I was like, so you just have to buy it when it comes out, and then you can still just earn it whenever you feel like, but it's like kind of got that little bit of FOMO of like, oh, I've got to purchase it during this like 3-month window so that I can do this. But yeah, and then it sounded, well, I don't know if you can then buy the pass or if it was just the cosmetics would go into a rotating shop or something.
Got you. Yeah.
But it was still like one of those things where it's like, so you'll still have the option to get these, and also you can still just buy the pass at any point, even if you're not playing Halo, and then come back to it in 6 months and still earn it from the pass. So to me, it was like, that's still way better than almost any other game. But
yeah, and if you're not playing during that season, like, why are you worried about the battle pass anyways?
Right.
Yeah.
I think Helldivers was the other game that was
Yes.
doing that and has kind of helped continue that trend. Both Helldivers and Rivals do the thing where, like, at least I think Helldivers does, where you have to like buy it in that season. You can't like go back to it once that season's over.
Yeah. So I guess in my mind, the biggest reason for games as a service that I see is money, right? Obviously.
Money.
Yeah. And so that kind of reopens that discussion of like, game prices have been $70. You know, they went up from 60 to 70 last generation. The generation before, they had gone up from like 50 to 60. But that was kind of like, 50 to 60, 60 to 70. They've still been at 70 this generation. They haven't made that jump to, a higher number. I don't know that they really could make that jump to a higher number and still have a bunch of, like $70 is already pretty steep for a lot of people. If we're talking 80, 90, $100, I saw some article recently about like, GTA 6 should just go ahead and charge $100, like just rip that Band-Aid off. And it was like, I mean, I get it. I get that. So in my mind, I'm like, I would rather games do some like live service cosmetic BS than pay $100 for a game, so like, I guess it's one of those that I look at as like almost a necessary evil. And I think the bigger issue that I see with it is more so just like, there are a lot of games that the way that they are, like, they don't fit the live service model more so than, and that I think is where sort of the friction exists in my mind. What about you guys?
We actually talked about the GTA 6 thing on What Did I Miss this past month. And I
Go
think
listen to their show.
I think that GTA 6 is probably one of the few games that could get away with that. So, like, if Assassin's Creed, whatever the next one's called, comes out and is like, we're going to charge you $95, people would be like, nope, don't think so. But GTA 6, I'd probably pay $100 for. Elder Scrolls 6, people will probably pay $100 for something like that. But if it's going to be like the norm, $80, like, I'm not going to do that, for games that are incomplete, so, we didn't even bring up some of the other really bad examples, really, really poor ones, like Avengers. The Avengers game was destroyed because of that. And instead of focusing on a really great single player or cooperative story, like the Guardians of the Galaxy game suffered because of that. Evolve is a really old example.
I was thinking about Evolve today. That's so good,
Honor, right? Yeah, for like these games that we're chasing this model. But yeah, I think if you're still going to charge $70 and then put some skins in the game, put some content like that, I think that's still fine. But if you're going to ask me to pay $100 and do that, the deal, so because listen, the amount of shark cards that GTA 6 is going to push when that game comes out, there's going to be like a $170 version you can get with like a bunch of shark cash, and especially if if online runs on launch, unlike remember GTA 5, we had to wait a little bit. So if GTA 6 runs fine day of, then they're going to be, people are going to be buying those things up. Was Anthem live service or was it just bad?
Yeah, no, it was live service.
Okay, yeah. Anthem, which to this day, man, how'd you mess up an Iron Man suit game? Like, in the peak of the MCU, how'd you mess that up?
Well, it was BioWare, so.
Oh, yeah.
It was post Mass Effect 3 BioWare, or post Dragon Age Inquisition BioWare.
People talk about how fun the gameplay was in that game. It was just everything else around it fell apart. I think what you're getting at, Phil and Dylan, is like kind of going like back to the core of this whole thing of like, because of the money. On the one side, I can see what you're saying, Dylan, of like, yeah, it's a method that in some cases is relatively unintrusive that can help alleviate the rising cost of video games. A whole separate conversation that we're probably going to have on the show at some point is what probably really needs to happen to alleviate the cost, and that's like rescope games. Like some of the video games have just gotten out of control and shouldn't cost this much. But talking about it from the live service angle, that kind of brings back to like the core idea of the wasted potential, because they're chasing this monetary system for games that don't need it or it doesn't fit well.
Yeah.
Like the argument for some of the Assassin's Creed games that people are upset about is that they would sell you not only skins, but they would sell you like boosters and stuff that would help you get through the game faster. And then they make an 80-hour game that feels like it should have been 40. And so it's like, are you making this game 80 hours just to sell these boosters? Because that feels really crappy. Like we would rather you make a good game and then sell some cool skins alongside it to try to like boost your revenue. Or like what Phil was talking about, like just completely ruining what should have been great games, like Crystal Dynamics Avengers game.
Yeah.
If that was just a story game, if that was just like a story game at the, that was at the peak of the MCU too. It's like, and then that kind of takes me back to like the Sony specific conversation. Yeah. Sony being so stingy with their platform, they're trying to make live service games that thrive off a consistent audience, but they're locking it to just one console. And then like in the case of Concord, they want to charge you up front as well without proving that the game is even worth that. Yeah. So that's the problem. And I think that's kind of the core idea behind the question of like, has this generation been wasted on live services? Like imagine if all of these games and companies weren't trying to chase this one particular trend.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like it is what you were saying, and partially, what I mentioned about just games getting ridiculously out of control as far as their cost. Like they're trying to make a profit. Like it's a business at the end of the day. And if this works like it has for Rivals, like it has for Fortnite, if it has for some of these other games, Destiny, Apex, some of these games that actually take off and get off the ground with this model, then essentially it's just like consistent income for these companies. And so it's like kind of a cash cow. It's like the dream. Yeah. But so many fail, and so many are just like mid. Like they're fine, but they just like you have to be exceptional to be a Fortnite or a Marvel Rivals or an Overwatch.
Can I give you guys this list that I got from a video I watched earlier today? Because we, again, part of this conversation is, has this generation been wasted? Because we're about like what, the 4 or 5 year mark.
Yeah,
we're probably already rumors
halfway-ish.
Well, yeah, we've gotten a PlayStation Pro this generation, and there's already talk of a PS6, or like PlayStation's talking about a lot more than Xbox, but Xbox is also kind of just completely shifting what they even like look like as a.
So what are you guys going to do next? We'll see.
We're just going to turn everything into an Xbox. Get Game Pass everywhere.
Hey, PlayStation, you want Halo?
Right?
They're just not answering the question. They're like, you can have Halo.
Yeah, my prediction is that Xbox is just going to basically make a standardized PC, and then they can be like, it plays God of War and it's an Xbox, like, and then just kind of be like, haha, we got you.
Which is crazy because you're playing those PC games on a Windows computer, so it's like kind of
exactly they're already winning. That's my whole point. Every time anybody brings up like Xbox, it's like they're already winning. PlayStation games are on Microsoft property. Like it's already like they've already gotten what they want. They just are thinking about the Xbox as a specialized PC. Like, but anyway, that's another conversation that we can
back to I do think we're closing in on like the back end of this generation. I mean, Nintendo's releasing another Switch, so that means we should
that means we're halfway through Sony and Xbox.
Yeah, exactly.
So here's this list that I got from a video I watched earlier today. So, and this is the PS4. These are games that were on the PS4 in its fourth year, and the Xbox 360. So PS4 in the fourth year.
The 360?
I'm doing both. So
Okay.
like a PS4 generation and then the Xbox. I'm going back 2 generations.
Okay.
Well.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
just
Gotcha.
as a comparison. So PS4 fourth year had Horizon Zero Dawn, Neo, Gran Turismo Sport, Yakuza 0, Resident Evil 7, Uncharted: The Lost Legacy, Wolfenstein 2, The Evil Within 2, Assassin's Creed Origins, Injustice 2, and Destiny 2. Just as throw out a few games. Xbox 360 in its fourth year back in 2009 had Batman Arkham Asylum, Borderlands, Halo 3 ODST, Forza 3, Dragon Age Origins, Shadow Complex.
Yeah.
Just to throw out some of these titles. Games that were, this is as if this was an older video, so these were games on the current gen, 9th gen, that weren't either made primarily for the previous gen, or are also not generally considered a better experience on PC, or not a remaster or remake as of May 2024. Spider-Man 2, which fast forward now, not on this list anymore.
Yeah.
So it's on PC. Jedi Survivor, Final Fantasy 16, Astro's Playroom at the time, and then now Astrobot, and then Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart.
Yeah.
And that's it. In comparison to where we were with the 360, which I think is the best generation, 360 PS3, in my opinion, so far in my lifetime. And then also compared to where the PS4 was.
Yeah.
In its fourth year. Which, again, when you put it out in a list, it's pretty baffling compared to like what we have now.
Yeah. Well, and I think it goes a bit to what Andrew was saying too, of just like the scope of games is so massive now. They've continued to like push like higher and higher fidelity graphics to the point where, at least for me, I can barely see a difference between like an Xbox, like an early Call of Duty and this most recent Call of Duty. It's like, we've upgraded the graphics this much, and it's like, I mean, I guess if you say so.
Yeah.
So some of the just the, you know, like the original Assassin's Creed was a pretty small experience compared to, you know, the like 140 hour complete edition of Valhalla or, you know, whatever. So games are getting bigger and bigger, and some of that is us, the gamers, our expectations for, you know, it's like, okay, this was really good. My expectation, like God of War 2018 was super good. My expectations for God of War Ragnarok are now even higher than the 10 out of 10 2018, you know? And so like some of that I think is on us as gamers, of maybe we are gamers, capital G, TM, you know, are unable to be normal about things. And so if it's not constantly exceeding the last one, if it's not, you know, exponentially growing, it's like, this is a trash game, 0 out of 10. I'm going to review bomb it. I'm going to send death threats, you know? So some of it is, I think, on us as like, you know, the expectations that we set are so high, but then some of it too, I think, is just like, yeah, why are we making these big games that are costing, like, what was the most recent? It was like billions of dollars at the most recent Call of Duty cost, right? Let me check real quick. Yeah, so I don't know if they've released the most recent one, but Black Ops Cold War was $700 million to make.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Which is huge, which, I mean, like, I'm sure they made back because it's Call of Duty, which is a huge thing.
Right.
But it's one of those where it's like, they made it back because they have to do this live service stuff. You know, it's like, what if you just released like a good shooter, you know, that did not cost this much? Like, what if we maybe didn't care if it was like exponentially increasing how good it looked, or, you know, whatever. Like, I don't know. Maybe those are just my thoughts on, like, it's ballooning so much to the point where I can understand why they feel the need to do this, and maybe they just need to stop doing some of that. But it's also, I don't know, like, what are our expectations? Would we settle for a lesser game? You know, would we settle for a smaller experience? I know maybe we're not the three people to be asking about that, because I sit down and I think, like, 10-hour game. Yeah, cool. That'd be awesome. But I understand that there are a lot of other people out there that are like, no, I want my 120-hour game. I want to get what I paid for. I want to get my money's worth. So,
see, I don't know if it's so much the time, like the 120 hours. I think that the hardcore gaming community, well, the hardcore gaming community has kind of developed this niche of like Digital Foundry wannabes that are just like critiquing every little shadow texture and all this kind of nonsense that like literally doesn't matter.
Look at the Spider-Man puddle. Look
Yeah.
at the puddle.
It doesn't matter at the end of the day if the game is fun. Like the game is supposed to be fun. And I think if developers trim down their development costs and size and scope, and they made smaller, tighter games that were fun, the majority of silent gamers who just like playing games and aren't as like tuned in as we all are would be fine with that. Then there would be an outcry from people who are like, their hobby is not playing games. Their hobby is like critiquing pixel counts and stuff. Like those
like being
people
upset, being grumpy.
They would be upset, but like realistically, they're not the ones actually buying these games anyways. And I think
they're just pirating them. So
it's
like
hard to
the stop having fun meme.
Yeah,
exactly. It's something to try to keep in perspective around all these topics is like the loud voices that like we hear is not the majority of people playing video games. Like the majority of people that are going to buy Grand Theft Auto and Assassin's Creed Shadows and all that, like there's going to be so many people that just go to buy Assassin's Creed Shadows that are like, the first time they realize that there's two protagonists and one of them's black will be when the game starts.
Yeah.
Because
there's two characters, and then they'll just keep playing the game.
Yeah, they'll just be like, "Oh, that's interesting. I wonder how the story is going to explain this. That's kind of cool." Maybe they'll go look up the actual character.
The game has watermelon and cherry blossoms.
Yeah, watermelon. Yeah.
What?
But I think the other kind of contributing factor to like this bloat and this cost and just chasing live service, because like the list Phil read, it's like that's a small list of games.
Yeah.
The games industry makes more money than pretty much any other entertainment industry. And I think especially with the COVID boost that we had where everybody like went out and bought Switches and everybody was playing video games again and they like got back into the hobby, the corporate side of video gaming has, I think they've gotten more heavy-handed and involved than they like. You think back to the 360 days and even like the PS4, like there was definitely corporate behind
that was the
everything and,
DLC
like, pushing
boom.
it. Exactly. They were still trying to figure out how to like bleed out the gamers. But you had the people who were still super passionate and had come up from like the early days of developing games that were still making games and still on fire about it. And now it's like, it's not the people who are super passionate and who are on fire to make these cool games that are in charge of making these grand AAA experiences anymore. It's some sort of board. You've seen it with the fall of BioWare. You've seen it with the fall of Ubisoft. You've seen it with like all these big companies. I mean, Halo to a certain extent. It's the kind of like the spark is not there as much in AAA games as it used to be, and we're finding those in AA games and in indies, and we're like getting that kind of creative hit and boost from that, and then we're getting kind of our more technically impressive experiences from AAA. Like even the Spider-Man games that I have a blast with and enjoy and think the gameplay is super fun and they're not like super long experiences, they're still so expensive because they're like trying to be an MCU movie.
Yeah.
That
right. What was it, like $200-something million to make?
Yeah, it's like that's not realistic. The only reason those are successful is because they're Spider-Man.
Yeah. And in another video I watched too, they made a good point. Like, remember back then, studios were allowed to fail. Like, you could put out a Spider-Man, whichever Spider-Man that came out back then, or a Transformers game, and people were like, this is okay. Yeah. And then a studio would be like, okay, give it another try and make it better. And now they don't get the chance to do that.
They were allowed to fail because that game didn't cost $700 million
how many people
to
want
make.
Days Gone 2, right? How many people want Days Gone 2, Titanfall 3, all these, but we're never going to get Titanfall 3 because I don't know if Apex is even still. I know people still play it, but like it's not.
It's
It
glory
still was like
days
a big
version.
three.
Yeah.
There was a big three. Like it was Warzone, it was Fortnite, and it was Apex. And like I hear the least about Apex now. So
Mhm.
Yeah,
but we won't ever get Titanfall 3 because
No.
of stuff like that. So
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those too where I guess the thing for me is like I don't hate live service games like with a burning passion. I think there are good examples of them. I've had fun with, like, I enjoy Destiny 2. I've been having a lot of fun with Hunt Showdown recently, and so that's technically a live service game to an extent. The
check
Division
out that
2,
video on YouTube, right, Dylan?
Yes, check out that video on
I got
YouTube.
it, Andrew.
Um
You had
the
to pay him back
Division
for plugging you a second ago.
Yeah. The Division I enjoyed, you know, I have some fun
Yeah,
with
I like the Division,
team fight
the first one.
tactics, you know, and so I don't hate a live service game, but it is one of those things where, especially in the, you know, we joke with our friend Joe who plays World of Warcraft that it's like his second job, right?
He's kind of made it that literally, but
Well, yeah, that is true. He's in a different category, but like we only have so much time as people and as gamers, and you know, especially if you have other responsibilities, like Andrew's got kids, you know, Phil, you have a daughter, right?
Yep.
And so it's like, yeah, you've got these other responsibilities, and so it's like when games start wanting not just you to play them, but you to keep coming back and playing
It's an
them,
investment.
and then you're not going to get everything out of it. That's where it's like, well, I only have so much time, and if I want to play more than just one game, like I'm going to get an inferior experience. And I think that's really what the crux of it is for me, is like I don't mind a live service game. I think Diablo 4 is an example of one that does it right, where it's like I can just go in and play the seasonal mode. The battle pass stuff is just cosmetic. Like it is, like if I don't care about the cosmetics, I don't have to even pay attention to that. I can play Diablo 4 season for as long as I feel like playing it, and I can leave for like 3 or 4 months and then come back for the next season and, you know, play it for a solid 2 weeks and then move on, you know. And I appreciate that about that game specifically, because it feels like it respects my time and it respects me as a person. That's not like, hey, you can only play this game and you have to. It's more of like, if you want to only play this game, you're more than welcome to. But we recognize that there are other games that you might want to play. Pal World is another example, where their developer basically came out and was like, yeah, like, thanks for trying us out. We don't care that some of you have gone off to play a different game. That's awesome. Enjoy those other games. We're still going to be here. We're happy for you to come back and try us out again when we release another big update or, you know, whatever. And that's kind of what I want to see more of in the live service area. I don't want it to have to be something that's like, you can only play this game or you get an inferior experience because you have to play this game 10 hours a day or, you know, 10 hours a week or whatever it may be in order to actually get a good experience from it.
Rocket League is another one that I was really into a few years ago, and now I'll play it a couple times a year, but it's still there, and it's got a good, you know, obviously very niche, but like it's got a good thing going, and it's figured it out. You know, that's something else that's done very, very well. But yeah, I also think I also and not to transition the conversation too much, but I did want to ask you guys, how much of this also of this generation do you think has been held back because for whatever reason these studios are releasing games still on old hardware? Like, why is there a PS4 version of, you know, some of these other, like the example from, these are games that were cross-gen that came out in 2023. Street Fighter 6, Armored Core 6, Hogwarts Legacy. Hardcore Legacy would be an interesting game. Hogwarts Legacy, Like a Dragon.
Wow, Hogwarts was on old stuff. Wow.
Jedi Survivor. Those were all like major titles that were on the PS4 and the Xbox One.
Yeah, and that's like 3 or 4 years into the generation.
Not to mention Horizon, Forbidden West, God of War, Ragnarok.
Yep.
Ragnarok's on old hardware too. Wow, I didn't realize that.
Elden Ring.
Yeah.
And I have 2 more lists. I came prepared. Sorry, Dylan.
Oh, go for it.
These are games also going back to the PS4 and 360, games that were not available on previous hardware. PS4 exclusives or 360 exclusives. Bloodborne, Arkham Knight, Fallout 4, Witcher 3, Uncharted 4, Dark Souls 3, Overwatch, Dishonored 2, Titanfall 2. Not available on the PS3 or whatever.
I bought an Xbox for Witcher 3. So, yeah. I mean,
games that were on the 360 that were not on the Xbox. Gears of War 1 and 2, Fallout 3, Oblivion, Fable 2, Mass Effect, Left 4 Dead, GTA 4, the Orange Box, Dead Space, Halo 3. These are games that were, once we transitioned to this new hardware, they're like, all right, that's it. Like, you're not going to get GTA 6 on the PS4. Stop asking. Nor should you.
Yeah, like I wonder if there's a point of diminishing returns where it's like graphically, like obviously the new hardware is going to look better, but like under the hood, the mechanical aspect of it, it's like you can still run the mechanical aspect on it on old hardware. It's really just kind of like the textures that are really requiring those newer graphics chips or whatever. And too, like games, I think are becoming exponentially longer to develop. It's like how long has it been since GTA 5? Like GTA 5 came out on the 360.
Like 2015.
Yeah.
They did do Red Dead in between there, but that was 2019, so we're still 7 years from that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so it's one of those where it's like games are taking longer and longer to develop. So like if it started development back on, during the Xbox 360 era, it makes sense that like maybe they were originally targeting lesser stuff, or so like I get it to some extent, but I think you're right where some of it is like we haven't seen necessarily that big commitment to the next gen stuff. I wonder if some of that is just like there's not enough saturation of the market yet. Maybe enough people have not bought PS5s and Xbox Ones or Series X's. But I think sort of taking us back to the live service aspect of it too, like seeing these games that started as live service and are now trying to pivot. It's like, how long have they been in development? You guys might know a little bit better because you guys are way more PlayStation oriented than I am. Like some of these ones that they just canceled, like how long were those in development? Like what timeline are we looking at here?
The Naughty Dog one the Last of Us one was pretty far along, wasn't it, Andrew? Like it was.
Yeah, they were supposed to have been working on it like when Last of Us 2 came out. They all shifted onto that.
Factions?
Yeah.
Okay. Because because that was at like a Summer Games Fest or a Game Awards, right? Like a few years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one was pretty far along. I don't know about the others, but that one, and that was one I probably would have jumped into. This is a little off topic, but it's kind of funny you mentioned Red Dead, because if Rockstar had introduced more live service stuff, because they abandoned it, obviously, but if they had put more live service stuff and committed to Red Dead 2, I would probably pour money into Red Dead 2 way more than I would GTA.
It was a good
give me
time.
A farm and the ability to like build stuff with my friends. Hell yeah. You give me the whole epilogue of Red Dead 2 where we put together a house. Sign me up. I'll pay $20 for that.
Yep.
But yeah, some of them were pretty far along. And then of course, like we talked about Concord, I think they all panicked and pulled the ripcord,
Yeah, because I guess that's kind of what I'm thinking is like, okay, like if this Last of Us game started development like 7 years ago or whatever, it's like it is hard. Like what seemed like a good idea maybe 7 years ago is hard to then shift out of. And we've seen, like Andrew was given some examples of like Avengers, Gotham Knights, some of these other ones that had seen like, oh, maybe this isn't the best idea anymore partway through their development, and then tried to pivot and failed at doing that. And so I guess I'm wondering too, like, since games take so long to develop, maybe that's part of the sort of topic, which is like this entire current generation, which has been, 4 or 5 years now. Maybe that's why we're seeing some of it, is because a lot of these decisions were made 5, 6, 7 years ago and are now finally coming to fruition. And it's like the industry, it reminds me of when, back in 2005, when World of Warcraft was big and all of a sudden there were like, it was MMO after MMO after MMO that was like being advertised.
This is the next one. This is it.
And it was like they would put them together and they would come out, you know, they announced them right after World of Warcraft because they were like, oh, this is big, this is huge. And then like 3 years later when they would come out, it would be like, hey, yay, for like a month, and then it would die because you weren't beating WoW. And so I guess I'm finding myself wondering, like, is that kind of like what we're seeing here with live service games, where it's like, you know, 7 years ago, Fortnite and some of those were taken off and people were like, oh, we should do some live service stuff. And then now that the games are finally getting closer to the end of their development, it's like the industry is sick of live service games, or like the gamers are sick of live service games. They want just to play a single player game, or, you know, a multiplayer game that doesn't require them to log in every day. And all this, it's like the momentum is already there. They can't pull the plug, or they have to pull the plug and just can 7 out of 12 games because that was their entire slate. Like, I don't know.
No, that's 100% what happened with Skull and Bones and Suicide Squad. Was like they were sunk. Like they had to just release them because it was too late to
Skull and Bones specifically, for sure, because they had that whole thing with South Korea, right? Where they had to like
Singapore?
Singapore.
Yeah, Singapore.
Where they had to release that game. So
yeah, going back to your question about like the cross-gen stuff, kind of what Dylan was saying, if you look at the difference between a game on the Xbox and the game on the Xbox 360, or the game on the Xbox 360 to Xbox One even, like you can see the generational difference and like the reason you had to upgrade. Now, consoles, like other than faster load times and it looking prettier, the games are basically the same. I think we've seen a few games like Lords of the Fallen with its dual worlds, Ratchet and Clank with like the portals and stuff that it was doing, that like really take advantage of the hardware in a way that like can't run on previous gen. But also most of these games are being made across multiple consoles and PC. And so it's like unless it's a PlayStation exclusive that gets to just only kind of focus on their hardware specs, like they're not going to really try to push for like that special creative thing that only the modern hardware can do, when they can just make a game that is basically the same kind of games we were getting last gen. It just looks better. And so because it's like, well, it can technically run on that console and that console. I mean, the PlayStation 4 was one of the like best selling consoles. I don't remember like where it falls in line with like all the legacy consoles, but it's probably under like some Nintendo stuff, but I mean,
but like
everything is. Yeah.
It has such a huge install base that it's like, oh, well, God of War Ragnarok can technically run on PlayStation 4. We'd be stupid to not release it there and let those people buy it if they want to, because that would just be leaving money on the table. So, and I think that has definitely held the generation back as far as like creatively, but I think that also kind of goes back to the corporatization of gaming at that level, where it's like they're not being creative anyways. So at what, like, if it were just truly developers making the games they're passionate about, we probably would have left those generations behind a lot sooner, because they'd be like excited about the new tech and trying to utilize it in ways that only it can work and not previous gen. But because it's so like controlled by the corporations at this point, it's like, well, why would we leave that giant market behind? Let's just go ahead and let's just make something a little bit tamer that can still run on PS4.
Yeah, let's make the game and just set it to like low graphic settings, and that'll be like what it goes out on the PlayStation 4 or whatever. Yeah.
That's a good point too, because like for so long, this whole industry was regarded as, you know, like secondary. No one really thought there was any money in it. I compare it a lot to what's going on with conventions right now. So now you can go to any, not even a major city. I mean, you're talking about even just like Jacksonville is a big city, but like we're not a major city, but there's a convention going on almost every single month. And now what's happening is all these cities, all these towns, they're realizing, oh, these pull in a lot of money. So people are putting these conventions together that have no idea how to run a convention. And what's happening is you're getting a lot of bad conventions, poorly run. You know, we talk to these artists that do conventions that are like first time, like a convention that's like the first year.
Yeah.
They're awful. They don't do them again. But like now these people, again, they pull in so much money. You bring in a couple guests. They're focused on the guests. They're not focused on the artist, the vendor, which is why people really go to conventions, so it's very similar.
That's 100% it. You have business executives that, like you said, didn't care about gaming in previous generations. Now they see the amount of money that gaming is generating.
Yep.
And so then they get brought into these companies at like an executive level, but they don't know anything about games. They're not gamers. And so they look and they say, maybe they look at what their kids play, or more realistically, they probably look at what's most profitable or like the biggest names in games, and they see Grand Theft Auto, they see Call of Duty, Madden, they see Fortnite, and 2K. They go, why don't we just make that? Like, why aren't we all just making that? That's what's making money. Why don't we just do that? And then they fight with their development team, and they have a game like Suicide Squad in development hell for like 10 years because obviously, I mean, not obviously, I didn't go there and interview the studio, but you would think that Rocksteady didn't really want to bastardize their game like that and release something that people were going to hate. You would think they would like to like continue their legacy and the high they were on with the Arkham games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You think, who developed Redfall? Arcane?
Yeah.
Well, like that's it was like, because there are two Arcanes. It was the,
right. Okay. Mm-hmm.
It was not the Dishonored team.
I think they probably leave Redfall off their resume.
Yeah. Which, now to be fair, in their defense, you can still purchase Redfall. They didn't shut it down like you can't purchase Concord anymore. So, but I think too, like some of these studios are maybe getting a little bit, I don't know, too cocky is maybe a good word to put it. Because it's like, just like, with conventions or like with MMOs or whatever, there's like a limited audience for that, like I mean it's still a huge audience, but it's a limited, like there are only so many people who are going to go to conventions, and the more conventions that you have, people are not going to go every single month. Maybe there are definitely some people that are going to go out and they're going to go to every convention that hits their specific interests. But there are some people who are like, I'm just going to go to this one because it's my favorite one.
Right.
And so you have these studios that are developing this like live service game, and they're like, no, we're going to pull Fortnite numbers. Like we're going to have that many players. And it's like, well, no, you're not, because you're number one, you're trying to peel off people who are playing already established games. And that's going to be a bigger challenge than it was when Fortnite came out and was the free battle royale. Like it was PUBG, Arma 3, and like Fortnite, and Fortnite was the free version. So like obviously it's going to do gangbusters. But now you release a battle royale, and it's like you have to justify. You've got to pull people from Warzone. You've got to pull people from Fortnite. And justify how you're different and do something that's going to keep people there and not just be like a flash in the pan.
Wasn't Infinite about to launch with a battle royale?
That was the rumor, but like I haven't seen it. I'm still shocked that there isn't a Halo battle royale, honestly.
Yeah.
But it is one of those where it's just kind of like we know that, but the people making like the decisions on the directions of these games, like Andrew is saying, like the executives, they're looking at it of like, well, Fortnite has this many players per month and this much spending per month. So that's what we're going to base our projections on. Like and it's like, well, no. And like Concord could have been a successful game in my mind. Like I didn't play it. I've only watched a little bit of like gameplay and trailers of it. I mean, it seemed kind of cool to me, outsider looking in. But to me, it also seems like the projections were so far off, which meant the budget was so much more than it needed to be. And it's like you could have had probably a solid player base that played Concord and loved Concord and kept coming back. But they wanted it to be like, they wanted to be like 100 million people or whatever it is, and it's like, well, that was never going to happen. So,
yeah. Well, so kind of like start to close this thing out, I do want to touch on something you were mentioning a little bit, Dylan. Like, I don't hate live service games in concept. Like, I think if they were intended to be that, when they were like they started development as we want to make this kind of, that goes back to like the concept is there's a gameplay loop that you repeat. It's kind of like Monster Hunter, the loop.
I can see Monster Hunter being a good live service game,
because
I don't want to say that, but like
yeah, you do the same task and it just maybe gets a little harder each time, or even like in the case of Marvel Rivals, you're doing the same exact like couple game modes, but it's fresh because of the different characters you can play, and you're leveling stuff up outside of the actual loop, and like you're chasing that progression. And so I think if the game was intended to be that all along, and if that was the like passion of the studio, then these games are fine. They're another genre, another slice in the industry, and I think that's healthy. Like having your traditional kind of multiplayer, having your like live service games, having your like one and done story games, having your Souls game, like whatever. It's healthy to have a variety of things to play, and I think live service definitely can fit in there.
For sure.
I think the problem, and kind of like where this topic stems from, is like, is the pursuit of this one particular slice of the pie by the whole industry in general, did that hurt like the experiences that we as gamers could have potentially had? And so like I did want to mention that, like I don't in like just on paper, I don't hate live service games. I play a few of them that I've enjoyed, and I think that if they're done right, then they can be a lot of fun. But also it's kind of like you have your live service game, and then you play other stuff. Like for me, it's Rivals. For you, it's Destiny. For like Destiny's kind of coming to an end, but like forever, it was like Destiny 2. You'd hop in and play it when they had new content, but you're not like playing every single live service game because it's just not feasible, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And so I think we're starting to get to a point, and part of it is probably like what you were saying, Dylan, that like development time has gotten so long that like we're seeing these games either get canceled or finally release, and now studios will probably shift into something else, hopefully. So hopefully we'll get to see a little bit more variety in the back half of this generation, and moving into the next one where the executives aren't pushing this one particular thing so hard. But we'll just have to wait and see.
I think that's my concern too, because of two things you just said. Like, we're in the back half of this, and also it takes so long to develop a game. So like we are pretty fortunate that we will probably get another Naughty Dog game, a new Naughty Dog game, before this generation ends. But like some of these other studios, if they were forced to work on a live service game, or they had to pivot to something else, we're probably not going to get that game in anytime soon. Yeah. So
and we're talking like in Sony specifically, we're talking about, we had a Naughty Dog, we had a Guerrilla, we had the Bend Studios working on a live service game. We had, so like all those studios, imagine if they hadn't, like you're saying, if they hadn't been pushed to make those, like if they could have just made what they wanted to, how many more games that we like could have potentially released this generation?
People talk about it all the time. Like the PS2 had 3 Grand Theft Autos.
Yeah. Well, and just like some of the, like we talked about BioWare leading up to Veilguard. It seemed like every 6 months you'd see another like big person in the BioWare studio was like announcing that they were leaving the studio, like the story director, that sort of thing. Like all of these people that made old BioWare what it was were announcing their departure. In part, like they would never say it, but obviously all the speculation is like, oh, because it was live service and you didn't want it to be like you didn't want to work on live service because and we don't know that. Again, it's all speculation, but
we do know that game shifted in development at some point from being like a multiplayer focused experience to being a story focused experience. So
yeah, but it's one of those where it's like, thinking about how many of I saw something the other day about how Platinum Games has lost a bunch of its,
I just saw that too.
Big people. And, some of it is like how much of the talent that made some of these studios, what we, just imagine if like Neil Druckmann had left Naughty Dog because he didn't want to work, like he didn't want Last of Us factions or whatever, and it was kind of being forced to develop it by Sony, So I think about how many good studios have lost big names because of this shift. And, think that necessarily like destroys an entire generation. Obviously, we've seen some of these people go and spin up, like a lot of ex-BioWare people have ended up at another studio that they've kind of put together and are making something they actually want to make.
But they haven't been able to actually make it and release it yet because they had to start from scratch. They had to build the studio. And so like as gamers, we're suffering because we haven't gotten experiences from those talented people. Like suffering is obviously an exaggerated word for like emphasis, but like we could have potentially had some cool experiences from these talented people.
One other Grand Theft Auto game, right? Something like that. Just to use this example, like
exactly.
What if it was just Bully 2?
Bully 2. Oh my god. Yeah, and we didn't even talk about this, and we'll kind of wrap this up because this is more my foray. But we didn't even talk about like the biggest culprit of this are sports games.
Oh yeah.
First off, they have no competition. So specifically Madden, FIFA got sued because of their predatory practices, right? Like they had to change the name of the game.
Yep.
Yeah,
so
there's been a lot of MLB The Show stuff going around recently because they've just they've released like the new like trailer, and it's like, look at how bad this game looks compared to like 2017. Like,
and I never played the show, but I know it was like the pinnacle of gaming, just like 2K was for a little bit, NBA 2K. In the new 2K, there's go-kart racing.
Why?
Why? The new WWE game that comes out next month has a area similar to the NBA 2K that's like the city where you can like walk around. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. The first thing when you load
now, can you jump off like a 6-story building and like pile drive somebody in the wrestling game just walking around the city?
Some footage did come out today, and I was like, this looks pretty cool. I'm definitely getting it. I'm part of the problem. I acknowledge that. This is, like I said in y'all's Discord, like this is the first year I finally said, no, Madden, I'm not going to do this anymore. So,
just get Game Pass and then
the problem
just play it on Game Pass.
Right. The problem is other people that buy 2-3 games a year are not going to stop doing that.
Yeah, the people that only buy Call of Duty, Madden, and then like 2K, one other random game.
They'll get a God of War on an off year, or this year it might be GTA. It'll be GTA.
Right? GTA for sure, yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, as we kind of land this plane, Phil, since you brought this topic up, is there anything else that we haven't covered that you wanted to touch on?
I don't think so. I guess the last question I'll ask you, I'll direct this to Dylan because I'm interested to see what you think, because I had heard that, I think I watched another video where the reason that Ghost of Wukong, like it didn't end up on the Xbox, is because they didn't want to develop it for the Series S. Do you think, like in retrospect, the Series S was a mistake? How do you feel about that now, all this time later? Because I haven't touched my S, and I don't even know where it is in the house. I think it's in my daughter's room, but like I don't use it, especially now that I have a gaming PC, which is the other thing. It's like it's now more accessible to either purchase or build a gaming PC than it ever has been.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm conflicted on the S. So like, I don't think it was a mistake. I do think like the name, like it was confusing the way that they named it and how they pitched it. I definitely think that has caused some issues. I don't think it's unreasonable for them to want it to run, because you did just read off that list of games that released on the PlayStation 5 and also released on the PlayStation 4.
Right.
And the Xbox Series S theoretically is more powerful than the PlayStation 5 or 4, like it's so to me, it's like, I get that like hard, like technically wise, like there's probably some stuff that's not like, I understand that it takes time and energy and manpower to optimize a game. Right. And I know that behind the scenes, under the hood, like Baldur's Gate was another one that like the reason it came out so much later on Xbox was because they couldn't get split screen running on the Series S. So like, I get that there are technical reasons why that has hindered and hamstrung some games from coming. I also think that honestly, most of the time it's just an excuse and like a way to get headlines and get like free advertising for your game, like the Black Myth Wukong people. To me, it's like you could have optimized your game a little bit more. You could have like you release the game on PC, so there's ways to turn the graphics down. You're telling me that you couldn't turn those graphics down and have it run on the Series S? Like, there's no way for you to do that on a console version. I'm not a game developer. I don't know. But there's part of me that's like, part of this is potentially because you could then be getting all those free headlines and like all of that free press that you didn't have to pay for because you're talking about how, and like kind of playing into that console. Like there are probably people that picked it up on PlayStation because they were like, haha, stick it to the Xbox gamers, console wars, like I'm going to play this game you're not allowed to play. So I'm torn on it. Like on the one hand, I do think they sort of fumbled the, like how they talk about it. On the other hand, I do think it's probably possible to optimize these games because we see, I guess the thing I don't understand is we see graphical options on PC.
Right.
I don't understand why there's like, theoretically you're just setting graphical options for Xbox Series S. So I would love somebody who knows to tell me about it.
Exactly.
But
I was going to say, I'd really love a developer to come on here and literally explain it to me like I'm 5 and be like, this is why this doesn't.
Yeah. Because it's like, yeah, like the Series S, like 100%, like, and I think that's what Xbox, again, I mentioned earlier, I think that's what Xbox has to do for its next generation of console is essentially just make it like, this is, like, this is a PC. We are just calling this like it's essentially a PC. There are 3 different SKUs. You need at least this one in order to run this game, just like PC has been doing forever, where it's like, that if your graphics card is 10 years old, you're running new stuff at low settings, if at all, like, and that's just the way that you deal with it. And PC gamers have been doing that for generations. And so I think if Xbox leans into that and markets it correctly, that allows them to get around this whole Series S, Series X issue, because that I do think has hampered them. But I also think there's a lot of just kind of like console wars BS and people just not wanting to optimize their game. And I think too, just like the install base, like they do that like cost benefit analysis of like, well, there aren't a ton of people. Like, we know that Xbox as a whole has less of an install base than PlayStation. And so we know that the Series S has definitely like even a smaller install base than that. And so it's like, well, if we spend this amount of money, even just messing with the graphical settings, it's going to cost this. And we're only potentially going to make this back, like, so I'm sure there's some of that where they're just kind of looking at it and being like, it's not worth it. So
I think in general, it is optimization. There's a lot, especially with Unreal 5 being the big one now, like the games are just optimized really poorly this generation. We've seen a ton of games release on PC and just be like struggle when they really shouldn't. And it seems like Unreal 5, there's a lot of talk around it being like just the optimization not being there. The file sizes for games are like so big. Marvel Rivals, one of the biggest games out right now, is apparently like not very well optimized and on PC. I think optimization definitely plays into the Series S thing. I have a tin hat conspiracy specifically about Black Myth Wukong because that game was supposed to be a Game Pass game.
Yeah.
That game was supposed to.
It was originally announced as Game Pass, and then they went back and like scrubbed all of that from the internet, basically.
That stuff, it's hard to find those like articles that said that, but it was supposed to launch on Game Pass. And I think that there was some sort of like kind of behind closed doors issue with Xbox and those developers, and they like are using the Series S as their shield to like not have to put, because now that game is such a huge success, like it blew up, it had tons of players on PC because it had a lot of China played that game. That's a massive country, and so they're like, well, now we don't really need to give Xbox a cut. Like, so I think there's some I think there's some deals and some talks going on about like them just wanting to release it probably as just like a regular game on Xbox when it finally comes. But also that game, it struck like it was PC first, and then the PlayStation version is nowhere near as like not as good of an experience as PC. And so I imagine that the Xbox Series S version, even being a step below that, would have been harder for them. It's like their first game, really, this studio, and like they were really ambitious with it, especially like visually and presentation wise.
Right.
So I definitely think that like the weaker console, but yeah, like Dylan and I were fully anticipating being able to just play that game on Game Pass when it came out. And then there was all the kind of weird stuff about like the Series S. And I was like, something's just not sitting right about this whole story. There's something weird.
The first thing that comes up when you Google Black Myth Wukong Xbox Game Pass is a Reddit thread. Is Black Myth Wukong coming to Game Pass, or did I imagine the whole thing?
Yeah,
exactly.
Because it was originally showed off in like one of their like little press conferences, I think.
Yeah, I think it showed up at an Xbox showcase. And
it was one of those where it was like, everything that you see here is at least coming to Game Pass, if not coming to Game Pass day one, you know? And
new
so
Mandela effect.
Mm-hmm.
We reached out to our community with this topic in Discord. We got one response back. If you want to be part of future episodes like this, if you want to be part of the conversation, Discord, join our Discord. That's the place to be. We have a channel where we ask these questions. So we posed this question to our community. We got one response back from Dave Jackson, host of Tales from the Backlog. And he said, "That's a pretty sweeping statement, so I don't fully agree with that in full. This generation has been full of great AAA single-player games, not to mention indies. But obviously lots of companies have thrown time, money, and effort in the toilet with short-sighted live service projects trying to chase Fortnite money when they could have been happy with just a decent profit."
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is 100%. Kind of the consensus we came up to as we were discussing this. Is it's chasing that, like, it's the executives chasing Fortnite money, but not understanding how Fortnite got there.
Yeah, you don't have to make 10 times profit. You can make 8 times profit and just release a single player game.
No, like, it's like J. Jonah Jameson is like, give me Fortnite, like give me pictures of Fortnite.
Right.
But you also have to make a good game. Like foundationally, it has to be a good game. Right. And then like Fortnite, the evolution of that game over time, and just like it was not the juggernaut it is now in year like season 1, 2, 3. It eventually kind of like skyrocketed and started getting like licensed characters and crazy stuff like that, and all the collabs and concerts.
Remember when
and
Thanos
stuff.
Came to Fortnite? Like it was nuts. Like when
do you remember when Godzilla came
license?
With him?
No, fantastic. What a time! It was great. Although I never got to be Godzilla, it broke my heart.
Me either.
I tried so hard.
I was so close a few times. But well, and like my previous times jumping back into Fortnite was always like they would be like, "Hey, lightsabers are coming back. You can be Star Wars again." And I was like, "All right, I'm in.
My hero,
you son of a bitch, powers. I'm back."
Yeah, my hero powers, sign me up. There was literally a time where, like years ago, where we were playing the game, like, man, you know, it'd be sweet in this game, the Attack on Titan ODM gear, and it happened 3 years, like 2-3 years later, like, and it was magnificent.
Yep. There was a point where you could do like all the different bendings from like Avatar, right? So yeah, I mean, like
cool. The My Hero stuff is cool. Yeah. I mean, Stefan's not here. You guys don't have to pretend to not like My Hero.
But it's also like the amount of manpower and like development time and stuff that happens behind the scenes to keep Fortnite as relevant as it is. Like it's not like, hey, let's just take our traditionally single player story driven studio. You guys can make games, right? Go ahead and just make this game now with your IP, and we'll just, we'll all be rich. Like, no, that's not how this works, unfortunately. So yeah, I think Dave was pretty much right in line with us and kind of the consensus we had come up with. Cool. Well, with all that being said, Dylan has prepared a little game, so let's roll into our closing segment for this episode.
So, I have prepared a little game, as Andrew has said. I went out and got it from Google. This is our game that plays very similarly to a Family Feud style game, but instead of asking 100 random people on the street, I typed my prompt into Google and pulled various lists from across the internet, compiled them, like, assigned them the scores for, when a game would show up on the list, and have created one sort of compiled list of these games. So I've got 3 categories for us today. Phil, since you're the guest, I'm going to go ahead and let you start, and then you'll also end. Like, you'll pick the first and the third categories, so you get a little bit of an advantage here.
Okay.
Each round will increase the number of points that each thing is worth. And so if you get number 1 on the list in round 1, you're getting 10 points. If you get number 10 on the list in round 1, you're getting 1 point, and it kind of steps down from there. And we'll go until we have 2 misses in a row. So it's like, Phil, if you don't get it and then Andrew doesn't get it, we'll call that round. We'll move on to the next one.
Got it.
So the 3 categories that I have for you guys today. Number 1, most anticipated games of 2025.
Oh,
Okay.
Number 2, best live service games.
Oh boy.
All right.
And then number 3, best Marvel rival characters.
Ooh, okay.
So there's a little bit of strategy here. You get to pick the first one, but you also get to pick the last one. So if you're behind in round 3, you can kind of pick the category, like you can try to set up the category you feel like you could do the best at, so that when things are worth 3 times as much, you can, try to clean up there. So which category would you like to start with, Phil?
In the interest of the topic, let's go live service.
All right. So these are, the one that I put together for the topic. So I asked Google, hey, what are the best live service games or games as a service out there? And I found like 6 different lists from various websites and compiled them all together. And so this is the average list that was out there. So Phil, we'll let you go ahead and start with your first.
Start with Fortnite.
Fortnite, number 1. Andrew, can you keep score? So that is 10 points for Phil.
There's 10 of these?
Yeah, each list has 10 things on it. So Fortnite is number 1. There were 44 votes essentially for Fortnite after I broke it down. So, Andrew.
Let's see. Trying to decide how recent I want to go here. How recent are your lists? Are they current?
This one was probably current as of the end of 2024.
Okay.
So I don't know how when Marvel Rivals blew up, so I don't know.
It came out the end of the year, so
yeah, season 0.
Right.
I'll just give you guys the freebie that Marvel Rivals is not on this list. So
Okay. Let's go with Warzone.
Warzone was not on the list.
What?
It is not considered one of the best, according to people on the internet.
Best.
Yes, that's important. These are the best live service games. These
are
not
fallen from grace.
These are not the ones that are, the most popular necessarily.
Rocket League.
Rocket League squeaked in at number 10.
Okay, I got number 1 and number 10.
So that is 1 point for Phil for getting number 10.
Okay. Is Destiny 2 on the list?
Destiny 2 is number 5. So that gets you 6 points.
All right. I'll take it. Get some points on the board here.
Mm-hmm.
See, at one point, okay. Okay, so live service. Yeah, but people don't like that. They play it, but they don't enjoy it.
That's the struggle. That's the struggle.
Yep.
Okay, I'm just gonna throw it out here because I think maybe. But see, that with Warzone not being on it, that's crazy. How about Apex? Because at one point it was pretty high.
I was thinking Apex.
Yeah,
Apex is on the list. It's at number 6, so that is 5 points.
I think Apex was probably at the top of those, that quote unquote big 3 for a little bit.
Mm-hmm, for sure. When they shadow dropped it randomly in March of 2020, when everybody was just gotten shut down.
Titanfall.
Yep.
It's not like Titanfall.
Yep. Andrew.
Yeah. I have 2 in my mind, but I don't know. I don't feel great about either of them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go with the Division 2.
Nope. Division
Yeah, I
2
didn't think
not
so.
on the list.
Still kicking. They're releasing content for that game. But
Yep.
Are they really?
Yeah.
It's a good game. I occasionally will install it and then be like, I don't feel like relearning this, and then uninstall it. But
I didn't get into Division 2 like I did the first Division.
I definitely like Division 1 a lot better, but
Yeah.
Division 2 is still pretty cool.
What about League?
League of Legends is also on the
Okay.
list.
Again, people.
number-
That's the thing is, people.
Yeah.
No
No,
one enjoys.
that is number 8, so that is 3 points.
Okay.
Running away with it. Do MMOs count?
They can.
Okay.
They are technically live service games.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to go with Final Fantasy.
Oh.
It's 14, right? Is that
Yes, it's
MMO?
14. That's number
Yeah.
2. That's number 2, so
Okay.
that's 9 points.
Okay.
There we go.
Let's stick with. Let's go. WoW.
World of Warcraft not
No.
on the list.
Okay.
So I have another game, and it's kind of like another swing,
Mhm.
which would end this if I whiff.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can think of a better option, but
The roller derby game.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. Well, because I feel like I did a similar list to this when we talked about live service games like months ago, but I think I like asked ChatGPT what the best ones were, so I'm not so confident in my memory.
What
I'm gonna go-
numbers are left?
That's a good call.
The 3rd, 4th, 7th, and 9th game.
2 in the top 5 still there.
Mhm.
I'm like looking around my room. Like, is there some kind of hint?
Maybe. I don't know. I can't see exactly what you've got behind you.
Yeah.
It's not
I
Jurassic
want to
Park.
go.
No.
Damn.
I want to go with Path of Exile.
That was not on. That was in the list that I looked at, but it didn't make the top 10 when I compiled them all. So good.
Oh my
good
god.
guess.
It's over.
Was-
Can I guess one?
Yeah, you can guess one.
Is
It's
it
over.
Genshin?
Genshin's on the list. Yeah, Genshin's number 9.
God.
So the
We're on
list.
Warframe.
Yep. So the list is
Dang it.
Now I'm getting them.
the list is Fortnite, Final Fantasy 14, GTA Online,
Oh,
Warframe.
GTA.
Warframe is number 4, Destiny 2, Apex Legends, Valorant,
Valorant. Okay.
League of Legends, Genshin Impact, Rocket League. So
Yeah, I was just drawing a blank on some of those. I should have known
Yeah.
at least 3 or 4 of those.
yep. So what are the scores after round 1, Andrew?
We're going into round 2 with Phil having 19 points and myself having 15.
All
Okay.
right.
All right.
So we've got most anticipated games of 2025 and best Marvel Rivals characters. Andrew, which category would you like to do round 2?
I'm going to leave Rivals for like the finale and
Okay.
go with most anticipated.
All right,
We're on the same page here. Andrew.
All scores are doubled in this round, so everything is worth double points. There is
Okay.
a tie, so there are 2 7th place games.
Interesting.
So
When was these lists made? Because
Uh,
the anticipated game recently came out. Like
yeah,
this
so I
week.
pulled all of these from 2024. So these are games that
okay.
So it's not if a list was like published in end of January, beginning of February, after some stuff had already come out, I didn't use it because sometimes
Okay.
they would leave off. It was also a lot harder because most of these lists did not rank. Like it took me a while to find ones that actually ranked the games that they were most excited for. A lot of them were just like
it was
most
just like a
anticipated.
list.
Here are all of the games, and
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, well that's not what I'm looking for.
Are these all that are confirmed to come out in 2024? Or like
2025.
2025? Yeah. Time is not real.
I doubt it.
All of these have, I believe, claimed
Or at least
that
like
they're
Okay.
there's maybe one or
assume.
two on the list that I can't remember for sure if they've said 2025 or if they've maybe just kind of put that out as a random target. But most of these are ones that either have a release date or have pretty solidly or have said 2025 is
Okay.
their target. There's, like I said, there's maybe one or two that aren't, but
well, go ahead and claim your 20 points, Andrew, if you want to go ahead.
I was going to
Yeah.
say. I'm going GTA here.
Yep, GTA 6 is the most anticipated game of 2025. That is worth 20 points. Congratulations, Andrew, for your free 20 points.
Should have thought about that when I was selecting. I'll just go with my first overall pick in Doom.
Doom is number 3, so that is 16 points.
Okay.
Doom the Dark Ages. Also, the reason I put this together is because we recently did a Fantasy Critic draft where we drafted games from 2025. So if you haven't watched that, go check it out. It's on YouTube, or it's also in podcast form. Phil is on it. Eric is on it. Eric's brother, Jay, also is on it.
Eric's brother, Jay.
Eric's brother, comma,
Jay.
and then also Jay. So,
Stefan, Jay.
Yeah.
If you want the 2025 My Hero Academia rant, that's where you can find it.
Yes.
Yeah. It's very similar to the 2024 rant.
There's not really, he hasn't really improved upon it.
Yep.
I'm going to go Monster Hunter Wilds.
Monster Hunter Wilds is number 5, so that is 12 points.
Should realistically be excited about that. What about the Ghost of Tsushima sequel?
Yes.
Ghost of
Yotai
okay.
is number 2. That is 18 points for
Whoa.
Phil. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people on the internet that ranked their lists of games they were excited for were excited for Ghost of Yotai.
Nice.
So
Ghost of Tsushima is fantastic.
that's what I keep hearing. I need to play it. It's on my list. So
I'm going to go with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2.
not on the list.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Surprising.
Okay.
What about I really don't want this to. Okay, how about the Civ game, the Civilization game?
Also not on the list. And with that, round 2 is over.
Wolverine on here?
So
So
I was going to go Assassin's Creed next.
yeah, so
Assassin's Creed. God, why didn't I do Assassin's Creed?
you guys are gonna kick yourselves when you hear some of these.
I know.
So number 1, GTA 6. Number 2,
Right.
Ghost of Yotai. Number
Okay.
3, Doom the Dark Ages. Number 4, Elden Ring Night Rain.
Yeah.
Number
I
5,
guess
Monster
that.
Hunter Wilds. Number 6 is
Uh-huh.
the one I wasn't sure about, Fable. Have they said that they're targeting
I don't think they've
2025?
said,
Okay.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
The 2 ties for 7th place were Death Stranding 2 and
That's the one I was like, there's no way people are excited about that.
apparently people are. And then Metroid Prime 4 is the other one.
Oh,
yeah.
And then number 9 was Borderlands 4 and number 10
Yeah.
is Mafia the Old Country. So,
Oh my
Mafia, the
gosh.
Old Country, and Borderlands were above Kingdom Come. That's crazy.
well, like,
Said Assassin's Creed isn't on here?
nope, it was on people's list because how I do them is I like find a top 10 list and then their number 1 gets 10 points, their number 10
Sure.
gets 1 point. And so it probably showed up on a lot of the lists, but low enough that it didn't, like, if one person was super excited for Borderlands 4, that was and put it at like number 1 or
Right.
2, that's enough to potentially bump it up to like
I hear you.
higher. So if everyone put Assassin's Creed on their list, but then ranked it as like their 10th most anticipated
Lower than-
game,
Yeah,
it's not going to show up overall. So,
understood.
yep. All right. So, what are the scores right now, Andrew, as we move into round 3?
I have 47 points, and Phil is maintaining his lead with 53. So it's
All
still
right.
pretty close.
Ooh.
So, everything is worth 3 times as much now.
See, this is going to be interesting because is this ranked on horniness or effective?
A lot of
gameplay?
these came from like tier rankings. So, I will give you that
Okay.
as a hint. So, and I believe they were all from after the Fantastic Four got added to the game.
Okay, after Sue and
Yeah. So there are a couple of ties in this. So there are 2 number 6s and 2 number 8s, but still 10 overall. So you'll just tie, like, get 2, like, there are 2 9-point answers and 2 15-point
Got it.
answers. All right.
Okay.
So, Phil, what is the best Marvel Rivals character? Because they have been playing a lot of Marvel Rivals recently. Him, Eric, Andrew. You guys stream it occasionally, which you will find out where you can watch them stream it when we do the plugs at the end of the show. So,
let's start with Cloak and Dagger.
Cloak and Dagger is
They better be on the list.
Is the number 5 best Marvel rival character. So that is 18 points.
Should be higher, but okay.
Andrew.
All right. Yeah, you made me bust out the calculator with these big numbers. I am going to go with another healer in Luna Snow.
Yeah, Luna Snow is the number 3 most popular or best character.
Those two.
So that is 24 points.
Okay. Let's go Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange is one of the 2 8th place ones, so that is 9 points.
So this is post Fantastic Four. There were some buffs and nerfs. I'm gonna go with. Oh man, there are so many DPS characters.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with. It's so hard to commit to one.
Yeah.
I also know like almost nothing about this game other than it's Overwatch with Marvel characters. So I have no way of like the other two I could verify a little bit just by eyeballing it. Like, yeah, that makes sense. This one, I have no idea if these characters are ranked appropriately or not. Right. So,
well, when you said you got most of them from like tier lists, I'm like, oh man,
they can be so wildly different.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna go with Magic.
Oh.
Magic did not make the top 10.
Okay.
She's hard to play with.
I've seen her recently a ton of videos and stuff popping up on her being like, don't sleep on Magic. And anytime a good Magic is in the game, we get absolutely horrible to play against. So I wasn't sure if it would have made the list that you looked at, but
I will go. Well, now I'm worried. I don't want the game to end. Let's take Hela.
Hela is number 2.
Ooh,
27 points.
All right, Phil has broken 100 points. Well, if Hela's still on the list, is Hawkeye on the list?
Hawkeye did not make the top 10. He was on some of the lists, but not in the top 10.
Because they were both broken in season 0, and they both got nerfed in season 1.
What about Spider-Man?
Spider-Man. Also not on the list. Didn't make the top 10.
I was worried about that because he does have like a pretty high like
skill ceiling.
Yeah, you have to like figure him out. But again, when just like with Magic, when you're good with Spider-Man, you can completely ruin a game.
Yeah,
I feel like I should have just stuck with the healers. I have a feeling there's going to be more.
All right, yeah, let's try it. Where's Sue? Is she on here?
Invisible Woman. That's She was number 4.
What about Mantis?
Number 1.
Oh my god.
Is Jeff on this list?
Jeff is not on the list.
Okay. What about Venom?
Venom, I think, was like number 11, so he didn't quite make the list.
Which other tank? Are there any other tanks on there? Is Groot on there?
I'll run that. So Mantis was number 1.
He has no idea who the tanks are.
Yeah, I don't know. Mantis was number 1. Hela was number 2. Luna Snow number 3. Invisible Woman number 4. Cloak and Dagger number 5. Adam Warlock and Moon Knight were tied for
Moon
number
Knight
6.
is on there. That's embarrassing. That's my main.
And then Doctor Strange and Storm were tied for 8.
I was wondering if Storm made it.
And then
Storm.
Loki was the number 10 slot there.
So that was Mantis, Invisible Woman, Cloak and Dagger, Adam Warlock, and Loki. Half the list. Is that all the
healers except for Jeff and Rocket?
Rocket, yeah.
Yeah. The one that surprised me the most was every single list either had Mr. Fantastic at like top tier or at bottom tier. The very bottom. Like it was either
weird character.
It was either S or F. It was like either S like all the way at the front of S or F like all the way at the bottom of F. Like so
a good Mr. Fantastic like will never die. It's crazy.
Right.
So what does that leave us with for the final scores there, Andrew?
So Phil ran away with it a little bit in round 3. I came in at 71 points, and he came in at 107.
All right. Congrats, Phil.
Feels good, man.
Congratulations.
And remember, everyone, if you don't agree with the list, I just got it from Google. Don't blame me. So
blame the internet.
Exactly.
Well, speaking of the internets, where can people find you, Phil, and the Wait For It podcast on the internet, and what do you guys have going on?
I was prepared for this because typically when you ask me like what's coming up on the podcast, I'm like, hey, Eric, let them know what's coming up on the podcast. But February is a weird month. All right, I'll just let you guys know. An episode came out today, the day of recording, February 5th. Late to the Party, Pretty Woman. We watched that movie for the first time. It was going to be like all rom-coms.
Wow.
It was going to be like all rom-coms. But then Amelia Perez, which is universally like one of the worst films that's ever come out, got nominated for 13 Oscars. So we are going to cover that for international feature next week, or on the 12th. The Game Room, for those of you gamers here that are listening, the Game Room episode this month is Guardians of the Galaxy. So Eric is finally playing that, and excited to discuss that with him. And the Creator Spotlight episode this month is we have voice actor Jessica Kavanaugh on. She played she was the mom for Eren in Attack on Titan, and Deku's mom in My Hero Academia. So a mom with a lot of trauma, but she was a whole lot of fun, and she nerded out with us for a good couple hours. So that's what we have in the slate for this month. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts, anywhere you find Friendly Neighborhood Gamers. We stream typically every other Thursday over on Twitch, and that's been a lot of fun too. So, and we also have a Discord channel. So everybody has a lot of fun in both places. So make sure to join both if you haven't already.
Awesome.
Absolutely. And then, for us, for Friendly Neighborhood Gamers, Discord, again, plug that. Come hang out. That's where you can be part of the show. That's where you can chat with, like Phil said, he's in our server. So if you want to chat with Phil about your live service hot takes, or about how he didn't guess Moon Knight when he should have, that's the place to do
haunt
it.
Me for a while.
Yep.
The moon haunts you.
The moon haunts me.
And then, as far as the podcast goes, like I said at the top of the show, we'd greatly appreciate it for both of our shows. It helps us a ton if you leave a review, if you leave a rating. That helps a lot, getting us into some of those algorithms and rankings and things like that to get more eyes on the podcast. Dylan, what's going on YouTube?
We've got over on YouTube a video where I attempt to answer for you, is Hunt Showdown worth playing in 2025? So if you're interested in Hunt Showdown, it's a game on Game Pass. It's been around for a while. It frequently pops up on like some of the best lists, or the lists of games that you aren't playing, like best games you aren't playing. Check that out if you're interested in Hunt Showdown. We've also got, I think later this week or next week, I don't know exactly when it's coming out, but Andrew revisited a topic about games that have flown under the radar, and he gives you 5 more games that you may have missed out on because, usually they're a little bit more AA experiences that didn't get quite the same press push as the new Madden or the new Call of Duty. So check that out. As always, we do have a YouTube channel if you're not subscribed, but you do listen to this podcast and you've made it an hour and 45 minutes in. We'd appreciate it if you would maybe go subscribe to that just to help boost those numbers, get us in that algorithm a little bit. So thank you so much.
And I want to selfishly plug a couple of videos that I did recently. I did a preview for the first Berserker Kazan, which is like an action kind of Souls game that's coming up this year that I'm personally excited for, even though I knew it wasn't going to be on Dylan's Google list.
Yeah.
And then I did kind of a retrospective look back at Assassin's Creed Black Flag and what made that game special. So a couple of videos that I put out recently that if you watch them and you have some feedback for me, leave a comment, let me know. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
With all that being said, thank you, Phil, for joining us on this one. It was a ton of fun. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. We really appreciate it. We'll catch you on the next one, and stay friendly, gamers.